welcome everybody. Welcome to this little creative break is what I'm calling it, because it's a really short little process that we're going to go through that's going to produce some pretty great things. I always really love when you can do something kind of short, because I know time can be hard, and we can build up all these kind of mental blocks to be like, oh, I don't have time to get into a big process right now. I'm not sure. And so my goal in the next little while is to show folks that we can just use like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and really tap into ourselves and make some discoveries that are helpful. So this class is part of a broader series that's happening in the Inspiration Library called the Creative Break Series. And we had so much fun with it the other week. I thought, well, I'll just share it with everybody because I think everybody can benefit. Each month we're looking at a different value, and we started with looking at growth because, of course, that's why many of you are here, is you have an intention to learn about yourself, grow, explore who you are, that sort of thing. And so I'm going to offer you a process here that can help you creatively do that. For those of you that are interested, if you want to do this process more, I will post in the chat afterwards and share in the email afterwards. If you want to continue on with this, a discount code so you can continue on with us in the live piece for the Inspiration Library. So I'll post that towards the end. So as a start, I thought I wanted to share with you a little piece of poetry that kind of speaks to growth. And it is by the poet Danielle Dolby. And it pertains to growth, I thought, really beautifully. Danielle says, "Do not fast forward into something you're not ready for, or allow yourself to shrink back into what's comfortable. Growth lives in the uneasiness, the in-between, the unfinished sentence. You are a season of becoming." So some beautiful words for us just to start to think about. I love the notion of not moving too far forward into something you're not ready for, and also not shrinking back, that there's this kind of space, this in-between space where discomfort is, and that's where growth is. And so with that spirit of knowing that growth can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit uncertain, we'll think about an area of growth for you. So if it feels safe, I just want to encourage you just to close your eyes, or find a window or a plant or something that is maybe beautiful to your eyes and your space, and just take a moment and soften your gaze and just look in that direction, or close your eyes. And just as you're softening, you can just notice your breath. You don't have to do anything to your breath. Just notice it. Say hello to it. No judgment of where your breath is at, just a noticing. And just feeling this transition that's always available to you. Transition from the kind of default mode that you might be in, doing something, thinking about what are we going to do, wondering, to a place where you can just push pause on all of that and just check in, just notice. Just feeling the space in between that normal everyday you and the part of you that can check in. So there's a part of you that is wanting to use creativity to explore yourself more, and is curious about this growth piece. So I want you to welcome that part of yourself to kind of take the lead here for the next little while. And I want you to ask that part of yourself, what's an area that you want to grow in? Is there something you wish you could do better, manage better, perhaps have more agency in, feel more? It doesn't have to be the biggest thing in your life right now. It could be kind of just a small piece, just something where you're like, you know what, the last little while I've really been hoping that I could kind of do this, or I was more of this way, or I want to welcome more of this in my life. And so just see if you can welcome that kind of one area of growth. Maybe just imagine it kind of sitting in the palm of your hand, welcoming it to come on over. Say, come on over, sit here with me. We're going to spend some time together. And I want to ask you if you could just use one word, maybe two, that kind of captures the feeling, the emotion, the kind of hope you have for this growth. What would that one word be? And when you're ready, I want to welcome you to write that word down somewhere on your paper. Find a piece of paper. It can be the paper that you intend to work with, or it can be like a scrap piece of paper, but this word is meant to kind of be our focus or our anchor. I'm going to create along with you here today. Write my one word down. So it's always nice to start in a process like this to kind of anchor yourself on something. So at times during this process, you might feel like it kind of connects into other things or wants to take you in different areas. And sometimes that's okay. And you need to follow that intuition. And other times it's like, okay, maybe that's for another time. Let's go back to this. And so this is what this word is for you. So what I want to do too is I want to just show you, I'd mentioned earlier before we turned the recording on that I have done this process with growth a few times here. And I'm just going to show you some images of my own growth kind of reflections that I'm using in this process, not to tell you how it should look, but to give you a sense as to kind of where we might be going. Because there might be a part of you that's like really wants to know, like, what am I doing? What's the next piece? And so I'm just going to show you this piece right here. This is, again, just cut up pieces, words, writing, reflections. This was a growth piece I did around how I manage conflict. This was the first time when I sat down with myself to do that. So again, just kind of a mishmash of things of writing and imagery. And I'll also just on this other piece, just flip back. This was the other piece I did around growth and just trying to think about my own professional development and growth, that sort of thing. So a mishmash of writing, imagery, color, all of those sorts of things. So that's where we're going today. So you can just kind of appease that part of you that wants to know and remind yourself that yours isn't going to look the same as mine. You're going to kind of create something different on your own. So you've got this one word that's going to be your anchor. You've settled on this one thought around what type of growth you want to do. And now what I want to encourage you to do is I want you to go into your collage materials and I want you to find 1 to 2 phrases or words and 1 to 2 images. So we're doing 2 kind of words or phrases or 2 images. And, normally what happens when we do kind of, a lot of you are familiar with like making vision boards or that sort of thing. You go out and kind of seek the thing that you want. In this process, what I want to encourage you to do is I want to encourage you just to kind of roam through these pages, just meander, and I want you to listen for some intrigue, for some curiosity. There might be an image or a word that kind of passes through and you think, I kind of like something about that hits me a bit differently. And I'm not like, what is that? And so those are the kind of things we want to follow here today. Not the things that we necessarily know or understand, but kind of the things that kind of hit us a bit differently or kind of call to us a bit differently. Which is a bit inverse than us going out seeking the thing. We're kind of almost thinking about the images and the words seeking us, if you will. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to be able to move through your collage materials. And I want to encourage you not to get overwhelmed and find like 6 or 7 or 8 things, but just 1 to 2 images and 1 to 2 phrases or words that will help you or that feel like they're calling to you. So as I said, I'm going to do this alongside with you again, too. So you're really working and really noticing that part of you where you're flipping through the images and you're like, Something about that is calling to me. Sometimes slowing down, we tend to kind of pick up a magazine and want to kind of go flip, 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 flip. That might be good for you, but slowing down and kind of looking at images and thinking, how does this land with me? How am I feeling about this? So for those of you who are just joining us, I'll just give a little recap here. There's a couple of folks that have just popped in lately. We're choosing an area of growth and that we want to kind of explore more. We've come up with one word that kind of encapsulates or kind of seems really rooted and connected to that area of growth. And now we're looking for 1 to 2 words or phrases and 1 to 2 images that are seem to be kind of calling to us rather than us looking for images that we want. We're looking for things that are kind of calling to us. Sometimes in a process like this, you might kind of find yourself, oh, I know you said 1 to 2, but I have 3 or 4. Is that okay? And so, yeah, you can start with those. But what I would say is cut those all out and then edit down and really check in with yourself and say, is this what I want? Is this what I'm looking for? Or is one of these not fit? We're always doing this connection, this deep listening that helps us recognize how things are connecting with us. So as you find your words or your images, again, you're going to just do what I'm doing and just kind of lay them down on your page. So kind of starting that process of laying down, catching the things that we feel. And again, not that you need to like police yourself or be harsh to yourself, but really do just check in when as you're selecting images, as you're moving through, are you collecting them because there's something about them that's offering you that kind of that curiosity, or are you thinking, oh, this is pretty, this will look good, right? So those are different parts of ourselves. And sometimes those are needed. And it might be that you want to encourage one to come um, more than the other, but if we can feel that kind of intrigue, that curiosity, rather than us already knowing, it changes the process. There might be already some parts of yourself that have shown up. There might be that old inner critic who's kind of over your shoulder. And if you notice that part, yeah, for sure, for sure. If you notice that part, my recommendation is just to note it. Say hello. I see you there. Thanks for your concern. I'm trying something else here today. I'm just gonna try something else and see what happens. I'm leaning into play. I'm leaning into the unknown. Sometimes we have to be our own best coach in our mind and constantly remind ourselves, why are we here? What are we doing? We're here to explore growth. We're not here to make a masterpiece. We're not here to learn a skill that we're gonna is Instagram worthy, or we want to hang on our wall. We're here to just learn about ourselves. And so if our inner critic has already shown up, then we're already learning about ourselves. We're learning about how it speaks to us, when it shows up, the ways it might be scared. And all of that is actually growth. All of that is every time we come to know and understand it and see it a bit clearer, the more we can find a space between it and us. And you might want to welcome that part of yourself back that is interested in growth, is interested in exploring this process rather than doing something perfect or making something beautiful. Technique you can use if your critic is very strong or kind of not really taking the cue is sometimes you can just move to a separate piece of paper and kind of have a conversation with it, have a dialogue with it. Sometimes I'll write out, the words that I was just saying, like, hi, critic, I see you. I see that you're here and that you're concerned for me and you're scared because this is a new process. Um, I really recognize your fear. I'm wondering if you will support me today to be able to be in play, be in curiosity. So kind of having that written dialogue. I mean, we can do that in our heads, but sometimes if it's hard or it's a new conversation, actually journaling it can be a way to get it out of us so that we're not lost in the circling thoughts, but that it comes out of us. And so at any time, you're always welcome to kind of pause your process and do that. You can also pause your process at any point and come back to your breath, come back to looking out the window, kind of pump the brakes a bit before you feel like you're you're lost or getting kind of sucked into that thought. So again, we're working towards our two images and our two phrases or words. If you have kind of collected some of those images, the next piece that you can start to do, if you're still looking, that's okay too, but maybe just start to think about cutting them, trimming them, thinking about, how do I want to kind of play with these on my paper, right? So you might not know already, but it might just be a process of saying, okay, well, I'll start here. I'm going to kind of start to lay things out. I'm going to start to cut things down. We're going to just find a kind of satisfying or somewhat satisfying way to lay these pieces down. Trusting the process. You might not know exactly what some of those images or those words are about yet. And that's okay. The intrigue might have just been very strong. I'm choosing today to explore my area of growth around wanting to do some more deeper listening to other people in my life, listening to kind of cues, this internal piece that we're doing where we're looking at images and um, listening in relationships. So it's always great in your process to just kind of take a pause, maybe just pull back, kind of look away from whatever you're doing, find your breath, close your eyes, take note of what's going on in your process. Take note of that internal chatter. Sometimes you're in flow and that doesn't feel right. And sometimes there's a spot where you kind of reach a little break. And then that's a great place to kind of recollect yourself. Go back to your word, go back to your intention. You come back with fresh eyes and see things. So I'm going to encourage you to move towards the pasting page part of things. So start to trim up your process, trim up your images or your words, and I want you to start to kind of think about how you can lay them down on the page in a way that kind of feels right. Again, this is a beautiful process. If you want to start building the muscle of really doing that internal listening, sometimes just even cutting up images and moving them around, saying, should this be here? What about here? Just checking that internal feeling like, does that feel right? Do I want this word here or do I want this word here? Do I want this on top? This kind of that listening, that oomph that I'm talking about around kind of checking in with yourself. All of that can be practiced very nicely with just papers as well too, because every time you move something, you get this kind of little internal hit that happens. And so we're just listening for that. I'll give you not too long. I just want to give you maybe like 5 minutes maybe less, 3 to 5 minutes to do your pacing so that you're kind of not overthinking it. And so for me, and those of you that know me well, I really like writing in words. For me, that's where a lot of my sense making comes from. I've got some imagery here that kind of makes sense. And I think I have some kind of like ideas where I'm like, I mean, maybe I know what that's about. But for me, and the way my process often tends to work is the writing for me, or the words kind of are where I really start to like pin that down. Like, oh, right, this is what this is. This is why I chose this image. For you, it might be that the images speak louder than your writing, but all this to say that I'm saving space in my piece here to do some writing. So I want to invite you to do that too. If writing feels scary and uncomfortable, I kind of for sure want to invite you to do that, because there's probably something there for you. If today feels like the day to try something a bit scary and uncomfortable. So if your images are laid down, pasted down, what I want to encourage you to do, and this is the last part of our process, is I want you to think about this writing piece. I want to encourage you to think about, not think, this is the process, this is the invitation. The invitation is for you to give this voice, to let it speak through you and to you. So again, this is a different thing. Rather than you writing to it, I want you to use this and think about letting it speak through you, giving it a voice. So if this image could speak to you, what would it say? If this word was trying to say something to you, what would it say? And so I want to encourage you just to go in and just start writing. If it feels like you don't want to write on the page, you're welcome to write journaling in the page next to it or on another piece of paper. Um, if it feels like you want to write in the page, again, I use this process a lot. So for me, I kind of have my own thing that I do, but you're welcome to follow me or do your own thing as well too. I'm going to kind of use these start by using the phrases that I've used here and kind of let them speak and say, what does this phrase have to say to me? Kind of, what does this word have to say to me? And kind of build it into my paper. So start with just a few phrases, and or if that feels hard, move to your paper on the other side and just start journaling, just saying, I am this image. You have selected me because I'm here to tell you this. I want you to know this. That sort of thing. Just see what happens. Just trust that process and see what happens. So I've got some phrases, some words. I might choose just in this moment, just because we've got a little bit of time still to kind of maybe add some colors or some embellishments here to kind of highlight some of the things that feel important, or just to kind of bring it together, the connections. So you're going to notice in this type of process, and right now, just maybe there's like a pattern that shows up for you, or a color, or just something in the aesthetic realm, as we would say, something that is connected to the imagery that you see. And maybe at first you thought, oh, why does that squarish keep showing up? Or why, what was I drawn to all that red stuff or whatever? And so this might be where you pay attention to that and give that a voice. Why is that color there? Why is that repeating pattern? Why were you attracted to that and drawn to that? So the other piece I want to encourage you to do, if you are where, you know where you are at in your process, and don't let me interrupt you. You might be taking more time doing the writing or laying your images out, that sort of thing. Uh, for me, the way I like to close this process is I like to have my imagery, all of this piece done, and then I like to go over to another page and just kind of really write out a bit more, just give that the piece of voice and really let it speak to me. So I'm going to do that here in the next, we'll give ourselves 5 more minutes. We got started a little bit late. Um, so we'll give ourselves maybe 5 more minutes to do the writing. So if you haven't done any writing yet, I really do want to encourage you to lean into that and even just take 3 or 4 minutes to do some writing. Just what is that image saying to you? What is that pattern, that color? If it had a voice and it showed up here to speak to you today, what would it be saying? What would it be saying? So another thing to do if you're in a writing space and you've come to some place of writing, that anytime I ask people to write, I always want to encourage them to go back and kind of underline 2 or 3 keywords. So sometimes you'll write a page depending on how you're doing this or which invitation you've taken. If you've written something somewhere, look back at it and underline what are the 2 or 3 most really important things here, right? It kind of then, when you go back afterwards, it can be the maybe in a year you flip back at this and you say, oh yeah, that was the kind of big takeaway for me, right? Or sometimes we have to work, and things come out, and then we're like, oh, that's it. That's the word. That's the thing. That's it right there. Kind of comes to us in a bit of a crystallization, or the essence of it kind of just pops through. And so we kind of want to underline those things in our writing. So I'm feeling sense of completion with my process and where I'm at. You might feel like there's some other places you want to work or explore or do more. That's okay too. Wherever you're at with the process, if it's just leaving the um, visual pieces down and letting those speak for themselves, that's great. Um, or if you want to be able to do some writing and have a little more space, time and space. Again, what I would say is the more you do this sort of creative process, kind of the quicker things come. Sometimes when you're being asked to look through images and see like, how does that feel to me? That can be a little bit hard if you've never done that before. So the more you do this kind of, the more you let go of all that other extraneous kind of self chatter or stuff that tends to bog you down and slow you down. And the more you can move into the process and get to the writing and get to all of the stuff to say. So, thanks for participating in this process. I want to encourage you to take it and do what you need to do. I want to encourage you to think about yourself as the expert of this, not me as the expert. And think about where does this need to go? Do you need more time with this? Is this complete? What can you add to this sort of thing? Maybe you could do this again. As I've mentioned before, I've done this. This will be my third time just exploring growth with this different area. So maybe you could take this process again and play with it there. So I'm going to wrap it up there. And for those of you that are on the live call, I would like to save some space for us to share.